Good morning, folks. Welcome back to Life of Us on this cold and frosty morning in Cape Town, South Africa. It's extremely cold outside, lots of rain, which is great. And we are doing yet another custom build for the Dungeons and Dragons board games. This one I'm really excited about. I've been wanting to do a character which had sort of a Batman type mechanic, which is sort of plays off on both Bruce Wayne and Batman. And I'd like to introduce the Human Vigilante class, which is basically built off of an existing character from the Pathfinder series. I don't know if you're familiar with the Pathfinder series, um, but there is there's a character build already on Pathfinder for Attic of Halvin, who's also got this alter ego of the Red Raven. So Bruce Wayne type Batman character that I've been wanting to build, and very different in terms of the gaming mechanics for how this character actually plays out. And yeah, for the minis, I'm using these two minis over here. This one is the Red Raven mini, as you can see. I don't know if you can see it clearly. I will look at a picture of it in a minute. And over here we've got the noble Attic of Halvin, who is an aristocrat. So without any further ado, let's deep dive right into it and get started on this character build. Attic of Halvin, the human noble. Famous for his tattered red cape, the Red Raven is a renowned vigilante and avid crime fighter. Unbeknownst to nearly everyone is that the Red Raven is actually Attic of Halvin, an aristocratic nobleman. Ooh, an alter ego superhero type thing. And the picture that you see as Attic has got a glass of, looks like wine, or I don't know, Chardonnay. I don't know what that is, but he's definitely this, plays off as being this sort of pragmatic aristocrat, wealthy nobleman, lots of influence, spoilt, uh, and he's got this sort of playboyish type lifestyle, if you want to call it that. That's kind of the feel that I'm going to. So we'll see two character cards, but let's start with the Attic version of it, which is the Attic of Halvin character card. In terms of stats, Attic's not very great. He's got an AC of 13 and HP of 6, and he's as slow as a dwarf, probably because of all the drinking. He tends to slur with his speech and move quite slowly at times. No surge value, which we'll get to in a minute. However, the flip side of this is that this is all just a ruse, and that Attic is actually very much in tune with what's happening around him. So his base ability is called Vigilante. So we'll see what Vigilante tokens look like, but you place 2 of them on your active hero card. Remove a Vigilante token at the end of your turn to switch to your Red Raven identity. So it's optional. You can decide when to switch to your Red Raven identity, and depending on how you play the game, there might be specific reasons when you want to or when not to, as we'll see in a minute. So instead of treasure card, Attic starts each adventure with 600 gold. So obviously he's a wealthy nobleman and he's got to have some money in his account, and that's where he starts with. His power cards, he's got quite a few of them. Hiding in plain sight, enticing distraction, high roller, noble influence, and a hedge fund. Now we'll have a look at those in a minute, but the bottom text, which you probably can't see here because it's very small, the fine print says if Attic is reduced to 0 HP, so this talks to the surge value. So if he's reduced to 0 hit points, remove all Vigilante tokens and flip over to the Red Raven identity, meaning that you can't go back to being Attic again. You just have to switch directly to the Red Raven identity. Level up. Attic cannot level up. If you roll a nat 20, you may spend 10 XP to regain a Vigilante token, and that limit is once per adventure. So lots going on over here, and we'll see how it plays out, but this is essentially the Bruce Wayne persona of this character build. Let's have a look at what comes next. So these are the minis that I told you about. They're the Pathfinder figurines. There's quite a few Pathfinder figurines that I got for some of the builds that I've done. The Human Psychic was one. You'll see the Halfling Mesmerist in a bit, and a few others. But on the left hand side, you'll see the Attic of Halvin miniature, as well as the Red Raven miniature. Very Batmanish, kind of like the Red Hood Batman. And let's jump into the next slide then, shall we? So just because Arik is a nobleman doesn't mean he doesn't have any abilities. He starts off with quite a few abilities. The first one being his hedge fund. And the flavor text reads, the best type of investments are the long-term type. They pay out the best. At the end of every hero phase, place 200 gold on hedge fund. Move any amount of coin from your hedge fund to your Raven character when switching identity. So hedge fund is kind of a sort of like an investment account, if you want to call it that, and quite a useful little thing, as we'll see further on down the line, where you do need money for funding, for purchasing weapons and things to add to your arsenal, because obviously Batman needs to buy and pay for resources to build all of his fancy tools. Likewise with the Red Raven, and Arik has this hedge fund. But the hedge fund can also be used for different other things, as we'll see in a minute. So next ability is called Hiding in Plain Sight. Oh, the gossip that reaches my ears while I stalk around in the shadows. Use at the end of your exploration phase. Roll 1d20 for visibility, then roll a second d20. If your second roll is less than your previous visibility roll, then place an invisibility token on your hero. Until the start of your next hero phase, your hero does not count as the closest hero when resolving monster tactics. Furthermore, you gain 200 gold for every monster that is defeated on your tile while you are invisible. So there's a lot going on there, a bit of dice rolling that happens, but essentially when it's time for you at the end of the exploration phase, after you've revealed a tile, generally what happens in the game is you place a monster, and that monster generally comes towards you and does something nasty to you. So Arik has this ability which allows him to become invisible, so he can roll a dice for visibility and then roll a second dice, and if the second roll is smaller than the previous one, he is technically invisible, meaning he doesn't count as the closest hero when resolving monster tactics. However, for any other tactics, such as encounter tactics or dungeon tactics that would affect all or most heroes, that would affect Arik as well. So the same applies. Just for resolving monster tactics, he's not the closest hero. And then if for every monster that is defeated on his tile while he's invisible, he pickpockets them and loots their corpse and gains 200 gold. So sneaky little tactic. Let's have a look at his next abilities. First up we have High Roller. I never blow on my dice for luck. I prefer having a pretty lady kiss them for me, says Arik. So if you're on a tile with 2 or more heroes, your hero gains advantage to all of your rolls. Such a playboy, isn't he? Okay, so that's self-explanatory, gives advantages to heroes on your tile. Enticing distraction, just drop a little coin here and there and they all go running off. So this is where that hedge fund would come in handy for Arik himself. Basically, whenever a monster moves to attack you, you may cancel the attack by discarding 200 gold coins from your hedge fund. Then move up to your speed in any direction. If your hedge fund is empty, however, you flip over this card. So it's useful. It does cost a bit of coin to actually get the monster off your back. You have to throw quite a bit of coin, 200 gold at it. And moving up to your speed, which is 5 in any direction. Then we've got Noble Influence. Despite all the rumors, I've never squandered any wealth. I'm a gambling man, but I'm not a stupid one, says Arik. Place 2 HP tokens on Noble Influence. Used during your hero phase and only if there are more than 1 heroes on your tile. So that's the prerequisite for using this card. Roll 1d20 for influence, then roll a second d20. If your second roll is greater than your influence, then remove an HP token from Noble Influence and any adjacent hero may then make an at-will attack. If the monster is defeated, you gain 400 gold and the controlling player gets a treasure card. If the monster is not defeated, you pay 200 gold from your hedge fund to the controlling player for any injuries incurred and flip over after use after you've used all the HP tokens from this card. So, but a lot of mechanics and a lot of stuff going on in that one card, but essentially it allows players on your tile to make an additional at-will where you influence them with your noble stature and your perfect talk, speech, to get them to fight on your behalf. And if they manage to defeat the monster, you both score, you get gold and they get treasure. And if they do not defeat the monster, then you've got to pay gold to the controlling player for any injuries they may occur. So that's Arik's abilities in a nutshell. Now move on to the alter ego of Eric, which is the Red Raven character card. So this flavor text is all the same at the top, still the same as the previous card. The stats are obviously different. Red Raven has some fairly cool stats. We've got an AC of 16. Oh, somebody's laughing. It's got an AC of 16. It's got an HP of 8. It's got a high speed of 7. Again, the surge value of 0. And if you read the fine print at the bottom, if your HP is reduced to 0 points, you may switch back to the Eric of Halberd identity. Limit once per adventure. Okay. And that kind of is how you would, suppose, mimic the ability of a healing surge for Eric. Again, Vigilante is his flavor text. That hasn't changed. There's 2 Vigilante tokens. And instead of a treasure card, Red Raven gets 200 gold for every monster killed. So you don't pull a treasure card, you just get money. You loot their bodies and steal the gold. Okay. Powers. Okay, you have the following power cards: Hugin and Moonin, Raven's Nuke, and Utility Belt. Doesn't seem like much for a character like the Red Raven, right? You wondered why there are only 3 power cards, but believe me when I say those 3 power cards are quite extensive. As we'll see, he's got a whole arsenal, a library of abilities and weapons that he uses. So this is the Red Raven character card. His alter ego obviously being Eric of Halbin, and choosing when to switch between the two is probably, I think, the more crucial part of the game, because you want to probably play Eric for a bit, sort of build up your hedge fund and build up your monetary requirements to be able to actually use the Red Raven character, because as you'll see, a lot of his arsenal actually costs gold to get into. So let's look at his actual powers. Right, his 3 base power cards. Base ability cards, we've got Hugin and Moonin, whose the Raven's signature daggers are equally deadly and accurate from up close and far away. And you can attack one adjacent monster with a +7 dealing 1 damage, or you can attack one monster within 2 tiles, but it's fairly low, +4 doing 1 damage. And that's his standard set of daggers that he uses to fight with. Then we've got the Raven's Nuke. The secret of Raven's Nuke is the research and development division of Halvin Industries. So this is where Lucius Fox from Batman builds all the stuff, or Lucius Fox's ancestor. Well, it will be Lucius Fox, maybe Lucius Owl. We're going with bird names, or Lucius Falcon. I don't know. Pick a name. But anyway, he builds all of the tools that you need. So once per turn, you may spend any amount of gold to purchase a new card from the Ravenry. Or once per turn, you may forfeit your hero phase to acquire a new skill set. So it's once per turn only. The first option being actually spending money from your hedge fund. Well, you move money from your hedge fund to your character when you switch identities. So spend any amount of gold to purchase a new card, and you'll need new cards to progress through the game to build up your character. Or you may forfeit your entire hero phase to acquire a skill set. In other words, you go off and you learn something, but in doing so you actually have to take some time away from the game. And that's generally not the best thing, but could be better because the skill sets do improve your character in the long run, as we'll see. Then we've got Utility Belt, and Utility Belt has 1 slot. So each of the items that he uses apart from his signature daggers take up slots in his belt, and you can equip the belt with more slots further on down the line, as we'll see. But the standard Utility Belt that the Red Raven comes equipped with has 1 slot, and let's see what we can fit into those slots. Right, so here we have the Red Raven's Ravenry cards, and this is basically his arsenal of weapons and all of his abilities and all of these nifty tools that he would use to progress through the game are stored over here. The first one of the Ravenry cards are called Talents, and you'll see at the top of each of these cards there is a utility slot value as well as a cost. The cost is how much it costs to actually purchase one of these cards to add to your arsenal, and the utility slot means obviously that's how much slots it takes up in your belt. Okay, so the first one is called Talons, and This one allows you to attack a monster within 2 tiles, and this, for this purpose of this character build, there are actually 3 sets of this talent cards, so you'll have 3 of the talents, and you can use them. It's a flip over after use. It does +7 1 damage, but it does allow you to attack a monster from further away. Okay, so it's a ranged attack. And the next one is Raven's Eyes. So Raven's Eyes are night vision goggles, if you want to call it that, and they do add a +2 to all ranged attacks. So combine them with something like your Talons or your Hugin and Moonin, and you're suddenly sitting at a +9 or +6 for ranged attacks, which is really cool. These ones don't take the utility slot, obviously, because you're wearing them on your head, and they do cost a little bit more. They cost 600 gold, but definitely something that you want in your arsenal a little early on is your Raven Eyes. Then next up we've got Tracking Claws. Go get him, birdie, it says. This also takes a utility slot of 1 with a cost of 600. Used during your hero phase. Place a Tracking Claw token on your tile. You may spend movement points to move the claw. 2 movement points equals 1 tile. At the end of your hero phase, any monsters on a tile with a Tracking Claw take 1 damage. Remove the claw after you. So it's a little explosive claw that goes after monsters, and it actually just goes and claws them, shreds them to pieces. Remove the claw after you. So Tracking Claws, you've got I think we've also got 3 of those in the set. And let's move on and have a look at the we'll have a look at the Tracking Claw tokens as well in a bit, but let's have a look at the next set of cards in the inventory. Here we go. We'll by now, if you've purchased quite a few items in your Ravenry, you'll need to upgrade your utility belt, and this is where the utility belt spare slots come in. So spare slots cost quite a bit, cost 300 coin or 400 coin to give you 1 extra slot, but they also come with nifty features. So each time you upgrade your utility belt, you get 1 extra slot, but you also get a +1 to ranged attacks while perched, and we'll talk about perched in a minute, because perched is quite central to this character and how he functions as a whole. He's definitely not a ground-based character. He's more of sort of both tactical ground as well as in the air perched, Batman-ish, looking over the city, over the dungeon, and attacking from on top. We'll see in a minute how that actually works. How that mechanic of perch works. Then we've got the second utility belt slot. This one gives you a +1 to attacks against adjacent monsters. So each of the utility belts have specific costs, but they do come with extra nifty features. So you probably line them all up and put all your cards underneath them to create sort of a feel of an actual belt. Put all of your Ravenry cards underneath it. Here we've got plated armor. Plated armor has no utility slot, but it does cost fair amount of money, 1800 gold, it's a lot, but it does give you a +3 to your AC, so your AC boost is then quite high, and all depending on how you want to play your character. So you can choose which of these upgrades and items and weapons to customize your Raven character with before you decide which way to go. Then obviously we've got probably one of the most important weapons in any Batman-esque type character, and that is the Grappling Claw. It is an essential item in the Raven's arsenal, useful for combat and evasion. It does take quite a bit of utility slots. It's got a utility slot cost of 3 and a very high cost of 2000 gold. So yes, pretty pricey, but place 5 HP tokens on Grappling Claw. Remove an HP token to use. Once all the HP tokens are removed, you obviously flip over the card. Attack 1 monster within 1 tile. On a hit, the monster is immobilized. Move the monster adjacent to your hero. So you're using your Grappling Claw to shoot towards an oncoming monster and pull them towards you. It's fairly low attack, but it does do an immobilize, meaning that the monster can't move because he's obviously wrapped up in the Grappling Claw's ropes or chains, and cannot move after that. However, you'll see at the bottom of this card there's a subtext for perched. And we'll get to perched, like I said, but while perched, the Grappling Claw gains remove an HP token to perch your hero on a tile up to 2 tiles away. So you can use the grappling gun for both an attack as well as an evasion. That's the cool thing about it. does take quite a bit of utility slots. It will take 3 utility slots, meaning you probably use a full utility belt to get the grappling claw. However, there are multiples, let's say multiple copies of the cards. So utility belt spare slots, there's at least 2 copies of each card. That gives you a total of 5 utility belt slots for customizing your character with. Let's look at the next set of cards. Still with the Ravenry, we've got Gripping Boots. Gripping Boots takes no utility slot. Cost is 1,200 gold, and it has the perch subtext, meaning gives you a +1 to speed when you are perched. Okay, and the Raven's Cloak, and I'll talk about perch in a minute and how these mechanics actually work. We've got the Raven's Cloak. Raven's Cloak is also 0 utility slot cost, but a cost of 2,000 gold. Again, the subtext of perched, +2 to AC while grounded, +3 to AC while perched. So if you are perched, you get a +3 to your AC, and if you're not perched, you get a +2 to your AC. So you could either use the plate for armor if you wanted to from the previous set that we showed, or go for the Raven's Cloak, which gives you a little bit more option at a little bit more cost. Then we've got healing vials, of which we've got 3 healing vials. They take 1 utility slot. Cost is about 800 gold, and these are just a mix of wild berry, ground herbs, and coffee to give you an instant rejuvenation. And used during your hero phase, discard one of these and restore 2 HP. Then we've got the Loot Swarm. So the Loot Swarm is like a swarm of bats, but in this case it's a swarm of loots. They take 2 utility slots at a cost of 2,000 gold, attack all monsters on your tile with a fairly high attack, doing quite a significant amount of damage, but quite expensive to get into your belt. Okay, so that's the Ravenry cards. Last but not least, we've got Steel Beak Gloves. They also don't take any utility slot. Cost 2,000 gold, but it does give you a +4 to attacks against adjacent monsters. So fairly powerful cards to build up your arsenal with, or your Ravenry with. Okay, so let's have a look at the Red Raven skill set cards. First thing I want to look at is Perch. We spoke about Perch quite a lot. What does Perch mean? A bird's eye view is the best view for vigilante movement and tactics, and I'm sure Batman will agree. And it may only be used if you have an item, or you may learn the skill if you have an item with the Perch keyword. So either the grappling claw, or the boots, or the cloak, as we saw in the previous Ravenry cards that we had. So if you have one of those cards, you could probably learn the skill, and it would be probably worth your while to learn the skill, because what Perch does is use at the end of your exploration phase. Place your hero on any wall adjacent to your tile, so the dungeon wall itself. Until the start of your next hero phase, your hero cannot be targeted by any adjacent attacks from monsters. However, ranged attacks may still target you. And that gives you sort of a really cool advantage to perch your character, whether using the grappling claw or the cloak or the boots, to climb up to the side of the wall and perch your hero. Does give you the sort of an acrobatic feel to this character, which is what I was going for. Makes him unable to, makes him a very difficult target for ground-based attacks. Range-based attack would probably get to him, but still fairly cool ability to use, and that's this ability called Perched. Also, at the start of your next hero phase, move your hero onto any square on your tile and you gain advantage to all your attacks. So coming off from a perch, you surprise the enemy, which gives you a really good advantage. The next skill set you can learn is called Takedown. Remember, these skill sets actually cost a full hero phase to learn a single skill set. Takedown is exactly as you expect it to be. Place 5 HP tokens on Takedown, remove X HP tokens from Takedown, and attack that many monsters within one tile. So you could attack them with any of your attacks using at-wills or attacks from your Ravenry, whatever it is that you wanted to attack with. Once all the HP tokens are removed, you flip over this card. That's quite a useful card for taking down large groups of enemies. Then healing. You could learn healing if you needed to, and that means that your healing vials, which you have 3 or 4 in your set, they restore +1 HP. So this is the first set of skills that you learn. The next set of skills is Precision, which grants you +2 to all ranged attacks. Then we've got Advanced Combat. Attacks against adjacent monsters deal +1 damage. So if you prefer just jumping into the fight instead of stealthing it out and attacking from the shadows, you could go for an Advanced Combat. Then we've got Stealthy. Use at the start of your hero phase, and only if your hero is perched. You may remain perched until the start of your next hero phase. And you may only make ranged attacks this turn. So from on top of your perch, you can actually attack when you learn the Stealthy skill. And those are right, so those are all the skill sets, and over here just some extra cards that will be multiple, just to show that there'll be multiple prints of each card. 3 talents in a set, 3 healing vials, as well as 2 additional slots in your utility belt. These are all the tokens that you see over here. There's a Vigilante token, the tracking clause, and the invisibility, which Eric would use in his ability. And that is the Eric of Halvin Red Raven character. Very interesting, different build that I wanted to go for, and I'm keen to see how it plays out. I might actually do a playthrough of a few of the custom build characters in an upcoming game or an upcoming video. Until then, keep following my blog, and if you are playing any of these characters, let me know how they spin on the table for you. Sign off in the comments on my blog, and yeah, hope you enjoy this. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.